Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Apingo. I'm that Chinese history guy. Here we share the myths, legends, and histories of the Chinese people, from the first creator to the last imperial dynasty. More than 6,000 years of stories, one video at a time. So if you like content like this, remember to like, sub, comment, and share. Now, due to the devastation and destruction caused by numerous wars and natural catastrophes that occurred throughout history, we are only able to discover extremely limited amounts of archaeological artifacts from the Shang Dynasty. But from what little archaeologists can learn about the Shang people today, one character rises above the rest. Now, from the more than 10,000 pieces of oracle bones of the Shang Dynasty we discovered so far, more than 200 pieces of them are either records of her deeds or mentions her by name. Now, we are talking about King Wuting's wife and the first documented female general in Chinese history. Her name was Queen Fu Hao. Now, Queen Fu Hao was the first queen of King Wuting, and she was also the first female politician and military leader in Chinese history who comes with first-hand accounts and records of the time. Now, as we know, the Shang Dynasty reached its peak of power and influence during the 59-year reign of King Wuting through his relentless conquest and expansionist policies. Now, the area of the Shang kingdom expanded exponentially, during his 59 years on the throne. And a great part of that military success was actually down to his first queen, Fu Hao. Now, it was said that in one summer in the early days of King Wuting's reign, the northern borders of the kingdom was under attack and the situation was pretty dire. Now, the young Fu Hao, who was just recently married to the king, volunteered to lead an army to repel these invaders. Now, King Wuting was skeptical about her abilities and was actually pretty hesitant about placing such an important responsibility on this young lady's shoulders. But after multiple consultations with the oracles and the shamans, King Wuting was finally convinced that Fu Hao was up to the task and agreed to her suggestion. Now, the young Fu Hao did not disappoint, and she led the Shang army to a brilliant and comprehensive victory over the enemies on her first military campaign. Now, after that convincing victory, Fu Hao's abilities as a military leader was established, and she was trusted with leading other campaigns against the enemies of the Shang. Now, to the southeast, the Yi people, or the Dongyi people, conducted frequent raids on Shang trading caravans and even into Shang lands itself. Now, therefore, King Wuting ordered Fu Hao to put them down. However, contrary to popular expectations, Fu Hao did not blindly launch into a full-scale invasion when she arrived at the front lines. Instead, what she did was that she conducted multiple covert reconnaissance missions into the heart of Yi lands to better understand the Yi military's weaknesses and their movement patterns. And when she finally found the perfect opportunity, her strike was swift and deadly. A single battle was all it took to cripple the Yi tribe's ability to fight or even put up any semblance of resistance to being annexed into Shang lands. Now, after that successful campaign in the southeast, Fu Hao and her army were redeployed to the southwestern borders to complement King Wuting's invasion of the Pa people, of the Pa tribes. Now, in this battle, Fu Hao was tasked with the mission to flank the enemy forces and to cut off their route of retreat, while King Wuting would personally lead a full frontal assault on the Pa army. Now, the battle was short and swift, with the Pa military forces routing almost as soon as the battle started. And just as they were, beating a hasty retreat, they fell into the ambush that Fu Hao has set up along their route of retreat. Now the entire Pa army was annihilated, wiped out in one fell swoop, and Pa lands was annexed into the Shang kingdom as well. Now this was actually the first ambush battle recorded in Chinese history with first-hand accounts of the event. So after these few battles in the south, the southern borders of the Shang kingdom was basically generally peaceful by this time, and Queen Fu Hao, having proven her mettle and proven her abilities, was appointed to the position of the chief of military of the Shang kingdom. She had total control and had final say over all military matters by this time. And for the rest of her military career, Queen Fu Hao led numerous campaigns, defeating and conquering more than 20 enemy tribes and states, and expanded the Shang borders even further into new lands. Now, although we say there were many battles and many wars during the Shang Dynasty, we have to understand that battles during the Shang Dynasty were, actually little more than, skirmishes involving slightly more than 1,000 men on each side in what would have been considered big battles of the time. Now, however, there was an exception. In the campaign against the Qiang people, the Qiang tribes to the west, Queen Fu Hao was actually documented on one occasion as leading more than 13,000 men into battle in one of the campaigns. And that was actually equivalent to leading about half of the entire kingdom's fighting men, half of the kingdom's soldiers into a battle. And through this event, it indirectly showed us how much King Wuting trusted his beloved wife's loyalty and ability to lead. Now, when Queen Fu Hao's tomb was discovered and dug up in 1976, miraculously untouched by grave robbers, as with most of these ancient tombs, they were pretty surprised to find many pieces of exquisite jewelry and decorative items buried together with a name that had long been associated with being a fierce warrior queen. Now, Queen Fu Hao's body was interred in a lacquered coffin, and there were 16 human sacrifices and 6 sacrificial dogs that were buried together with her. And the artifacts unearthed from the tomb included, among other things, 4 bronze mirrors, 4 bronze battle axes, and 130 bronze weapons of various different kinds. Now, also discovered were more than 200 pieces of bronze ceremonial ware, 15 varieties of drinking ware, totaling about 156 pieces, 755 pieces of jade jewelry from all over the land, some as far as from today's Xinjiang region, and more than 7,000 pieces of shell currency. I believe we've discussed in one of the previous episodes that the Shang people used seashells as a form of currency. So more than 7,000 pieces of this shell currency were found in the tomb, and the origins of these shells, they came from as far as today's Taiwan and Hainan regions, and these 7,000 shells would basically be a king's ransom worth of riches of that period. And on top of that, there were 47 pieces of jewelry that were made with various kinds of precious stones, and of course other assorted collections of pottery, stoneware, and other shellware meaning items made from seashells and the likes. Now, many of these artifacts have the name Fu Hao engraved onto them. If I'm not wrong, there were at least about more than 100 pieces of these artifacts with the name Fu Hao engraved. And amongst this treasure trove of artifacts, the most interesting piece, it must be the bronze battle axe. There was this one bronze battle axe out of the 4 that weighed actually 9 kilograms, which is about 20 pounds for our friends in Americas. Yeah, like 9 kilograms, about 20 pounds, 22 pounds, around there. So this battle axe, this bronze battle axe, was engraved with Fu Hao's name and together with a decorative pictogram of 2 tigers eating a person. Now, it is believed that this particular axe was actually Queen Fu Hao's personal weapon that she carried into the many different battlefields that she fought on. And of course, the dog has to bark. And it was both a battlefield weapon as well as a symbol of a military and royal authority. Now, one can only imagine the strength of this warrior queen, to be able to fight in these battles with this weapon that is effectively 9 kilograms or about 20 over pounds heavy, swinging it around, hacking people down, in battle. So yeah, how strong is this woman that we are talking about here? Now, one might be forgiven to think that, being both a queen and the chief of military would be the pinnacle of power and status that a woman can achieve in those times. But Queen Fu Hao topped that, on top of being a queen and the chief of military, Queen Fu Hao also had another very special position in the Shang court. She was King Wu Ting's most trusted oracle or shaman. Now, as we know, the Shang Dynasty, the Shang society, was a deeply superstitious society. They were deeply superstitious people who placed great importance, on ceremonies and of worship, of sacrifices, and oracles were consulted on almost all decisions made by the ruling classes, which affected almost all aspects of life in the Shang society. Now, Queen Fu Hao, being the king's most trusted oracle, would preside almost all of the most important ancestral worships, heavenly worships, and will be consulted on, the most important decisions that affected the running of the kingdom and the dynasty. Now, to be placed in such an important position, she would not only be, just a conduit between the mortal and the spiritual realms, she would also need to be extremely intelligent and be able to offer advice on political matters. And she would most definitely be one of the very few literate people of the time, because she would have to be able to carve her prophecies and her visions and her answers on the oracle bones that we find today. But such a talented and capable woman was unfortunately short-lived. It is believed that Queen Fu Hao passed away either in her late 30s or in her early 40s. Now, although it will not be really considered a short life in relation to the average lifespan of the time, she definitely passed away much earlier than her husband, who, as we know, sat on the throne for 59 years. And we also know that King Wu Ting really loved her very deeply. Now, although Wu Ting was said to have 64 wives and he raised 3 different queens in his life, it is without a doubt that Queen Fu Hao was the true love of his life. Not only was she his queen, she was also his companion and his partner in pushing the Shang Dynasty to its pinnacle of power and influence. Now, of the more than 200 pieces of oracle bones that mention Fu Hao, many of those were actually in answer to King Wu Ting's questions about her health and her well-being. Now, some interesting ones here. One mentioned King Wu Ting asking the oracle about a toothache that the queen was suffering from, and another was an inquiry about her pregnancy and asking for a projected delivery date. Now, on this point, from the answers that were carved on the bones, we know that the Shang people of that time have actually enough rudimentary medical knowledge to be able to quite accurately predict a pregnancy's duration and delivery dates, and that was actually unmatched in world history of that time. Other civilizations would be able to do that at a much later point in history. Now, as can be expected, King Wuting was devastated and distraught when Queen Fu Hao passed away, and against all objections and taboo and all kinds of protocol, King Wuting ordered Fu Hao be buried beside his chambers within the palace grounds so he could keep her company for the rest of his life. And her funeral was conducted with the protocol and ceremonies accorded only to the greatest kings and leaders of the Shang people. Now, even after her passing, King Wuting was greatly concerned about her well-being in the afterlife. In fact, on 3 different occasions, King Wuting seek to know that Fu Hao was doing well in the afterlife. Through 3 different occasions, King Wuting asked the oracles the same question, is Fu Hao well taken care of? And the oracles' answers on these 3 different occasions were as follows. The first time, they said, she is well taken care of by King Zhu Yi. And the second occasion, she is well taken care of by King Tai Jia. And on the third and last occasion where this question was posed, the answer was, she is well taken care of by King Shang Tang. Now, these 3 answers that King Wuting got finally allowed him to be assured that his beloved wife, his love of his lifetime, was welcome and well taken care of by the great ancestors of the Shang Dynasty, of the Shang people. Now, years after Fu Hao's passing, a new enemy actually appeared to the north of the realm once again, and they proved to be rather tricky or difficult to deal with. After several unsuccessful campaigns to deal with this new enemy, King Wuting actually consulted the oracles on numerous occasions to ask Fu Hao for her blessings and for her advice on how to defeat this enemy. And these records kind of reflected the impact that Fu Hao left on the Shang people as a brilliant military commander and strategist. Now, another uncommon thing that we would see throughout Chinese history, not just the Shang Dynasty, was the fact that Queen Fu Hao was actually elevated and placed into the Shang ancestral shrine by King Wuting. Now, the ancestral shrine is reserved for men, and only the male kings and leaders of the royal household would be placed into the ancestral shrine to enjoy the worships and the sacrifices by descendants. And Queen Fu Hao was actually elevated and placed into the Shang ancestral shrine by King Wuting to receive the same level of worship, accorded to all the great ancestors and kings of the Shang people. And if I'm not wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, leave it in the comment section, she will be the only female to be accorded this unprecedented privilege in the heavily patriarchal Chinese society of ancient China. And she will be remembered by all future generations of the Shang people as the mother ancestor of the Shang. Now, I hope you enjoyed this story about the first female general and military leader in Chinese history. And if you did, remember to, like, sub, comment, and share. And if you like to support the channel and this little project in a more substantial way, you can do so on our Patreon page. And it will definitely keep the lights on around here, and it will help me make better videos for all you beautiful, wonderful viewers out there. And so I guess that's it for today, and I will see you in the next episode.